Board Member Ramirez,
Here.
Board Member Ortiz,
Here.
Board Member Hermes.
Here.
Board Member Fishback.
Here.
Board Member Duhon,
Here.
Board Member Valenzuela.
Here.
I'm like Ibarra.
Ibarra, sorry. All right, all are present. We'll do approval of the minutes. We'll consider approval of the minutes from July 29, 2024. Yeah. We presenting that?
This normal, if there are any changes or not, just a motion.
Making a motion to approve the minutes.
A motion to approve the minutes from our July meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor?
I,
Anyone opposed? I'm waiting for that. You second that?
Do you want to vote?
This is the citizen comment period with Parks and Recreation Board. The Parks and Recreation Board welcomes comments from citizens early in the agenda of the Parks and Recreation Board meetings. Those wishing to speak are encouraged to sign in before the meeting begins. Speakers may be provided with an opportunity to speak during this time on any agenda item or any other matter concerning city business, and they must observe the 3-minute time limit. Citizens.
I would actually, and I shouldn't need 3 minutes, but I just wanted to quickly go over what's left in August over at the Krug Building. Monday and Wednesday, exercise 2 sessions, Tai Chi on Thursday. And this Thursday, we have a remembrance ceremony for people who have lost people. And we met at Lehman High School the other day, and I said, I want to show of hands, how many people have lost classmates to suicide, drug overdose, et cetera, et cetera. Many of those students. So we want this to be an activity for all ages, because we all suffer loss, even if it's just a boyfriend or girlfriend that you lost, you know. It's something you have to deal with. Okay, and then Friday we have pickleball, and then starting in September, we'll have pickleball every Friday at Ashwood Building. Thank you so much for that. The last Saturday of each month, we have a dance from 5 to 8 over there. And then moving on to September, I gave each of y'all a calendar. I'm just gonna highlight a couple of things. On Grandparents' Day, we have a jamboree. It's live musicians from Austin. They come, there's usually 10, 20 musicians up there. They just kind of come in, they pick up their fiddle or whatever. So we're asking whole families for Grandparents' Day, bring your whole family. We're partnering with the food bank. They're collecting macaroni and cheese the whole month of September. They're gonna post that over at the library. We're partnering with the Citizens Police Academy September 1st. They're having a bingo and a silent auction over at the Krug Center. Thank you for the new floors at the Krug Center. Thank you, thank you. I don't know how much that cost the city, but I'm sure tens of thousands. Thank you. I think that's it. Can you also drop off donations at the library? They have their address, the food bank in San Marcos, but I could easily set up a box at the library. We're getting approval from the new library director to make sure we can post these things, but I expect that we will. And then I think they might be putting them in like their calendar. Anyway, I bet my 3 minutes is up. Let me stop.
All right, we're gonna receive a report and hold a discussion and provide staff direction regarding the monthly staff report.
Okay. Yeah, we're gonna start right in. This is gonna be kind of a round robin effort. We'll start with quick overview, Sportsplex updates, and also the master plan. Greg Clark Park Field Reservations updates, State of the Parks Address update, Park CIP updates, and the 2025 special events calendar. Okay, you all received a memo earlier this month regarding the Sportsplex update and how that was put briefly on pause. And we are going to bring this back to discussion, but through the master plan process. And so this master plan is going to have multiple multiple master plans within it, so call them sub-master plans, that'll be more site-based, including the sportsplex. And so the feedback will be taken this time around in the proper studies and analysis of what could go into this, what the site would look like, concepts, so there'll be through the master plan process, there's gonna be different, call them, like technical committees that are gonna participate in all of these various aspects. And so if there's for the recreation portion of the master plan, there might be a group that will be sort of the sounding board for programming. And if there's anything parks related, in all likelihood, it's gonna go through the Parks and Recreation Board as a sounding board. Steering committee will most likely be made up of staff members who will take all the data and help to package it for presentations as we move through the master plan. The biggest lift is going to be the survey and input portion. So we had a master plan kickoff internal meeting last Tuesday, right? I believe it was last Tuesday. And we brought in all the department heads to talk about their respective roles in this, from finance to administrative services to engineering, talking about the roles that they would play in this master planning process. Because this is a big lift, right? It's gonna have, when you talk about parks, you're talking about engineering, you're talking about traffic impacts, you're talking about finance. All of the needs that come with this and the recreational side of it, not just the hard pieces, but the programming needs that come from the community. And so with the consultant Stantec, there is a division that basically oversees the public input process. So we have to ask the right questions to get the right kind of input. And then we have to have the right amount of responses so that we have the quality that we need to package this properly. We're talking about something that's going to last us the next 10 years. So the timeline is short relatively for picking up all the data, getting it out to the community. So the consultants have built a website that the community members will be able to go to get updates on the master plan, to learn more about it. We can issue survey links via social media. We can do it via written cards. We can do it via placard featuring a QR code. We know that some groups will need assistance, like we talked to CAS recently and they said, hey, some of our group members might need assistance walking through. And so they said they would be happy to assist in guiding them through that process. So that might need to be an effort in itself. But we just want to make sure that it gets to the people in the way that they are most comfortable in receiving it. We're talking about City Fest, which will be this October. What's the date? October 19th for City Fest. We think that's a great opportunity for a kickoff for the master plan to the community to say, hey, the website's up and running. We're already taking survey information. We're gonna have a large part of the community out learning about city departments and what we do for business. And then you'll have more hands-on assistance from Park and Recreation, who will be operating their own booth to walk them through what the master plan means. Stop at our booth to learn more about what we're doing over the next several months to build this out. And so we're really excited about it. You guys are gonna have a seat at that table and in its various stages over the next several months. And so at this time, I'd be happy to take any questions pertaining to the master plan.
I have a question in regards to the survey. I know that in the past, the surveys have been taken by people who are primarily on social media or somewhat dialed into the community. I would really like for us to do a wider, to maybe get a wider group of people. And one of my suggestions might be, I know that when my daughter was in elementary school, she had a folder that she had to come home with every day. And quite often there were flyers, there were event information in there. I think it would be great if we could create a flyer that is in Spanish on one side, English on the other, that we could distribute to the schools so that these students can bring it home in the hopes that we hit some of the residents that maybe are not social media savvy or dialed into the community as much as some of the ones that we see a lot of results from.
Or potentially putting it, all of the principals send out a weekly newsletter called S'more. And if you put it in that, parents are gonna see it.
I just think that there's,
Every week.
and I may be wrong, but I have a feeling that's similar to our elections. And it's the same people who vote in our elections are the same people who do surveys or dialed in enough. And it may just be that we haven't broadcasted it out,
You're right.
or people don't know where to go to look for something like that.
Okay, that's really good input. I mean, those are the exact ideas we're looking for because we want an overwhelming amount of responses because this is for the community, again, for the next 10 years. And when you think about all the aspects of offerings throughout our programs and in our parks, we need to hear from all generations, all demographics. So we appreciate that. And we'll make sure to mention that to the consultants. I really like the idea about the electronic newsletter and SMORE
Yeah.
to get that information out.
It's pretty easy.
Yeah, we've got a good relationship with
Printing
the
process.
ISD, so. Okay, thank you. Anything else for master plan before we advance?
Well, I just follow up on that. The more people you get invested early in thinking and talking about these things, the easier it's gonna be to pass a bond issue when we gotta fund it.
Yeah, because this is the voice of the entire community, right? And that's what we like about this. This is what everybody wants to see in their parks. And what will also come out of this process are like, like I mentioned earlier, we got to ask the right questions to get the right type of feedback. We need to know, what age group you are, if you live in the city of Kyle, what you participate in currently. There's a whole host of questions that these experts that we've hired are going to ask and get this tailored right for our needs. But they're also gonna look at like that delta between our existing resources and what the national standards are for a community of size. And that meets our demographics. When you start thinking about, and I think I mentioned this last time that we met, was where are we under, at, or above the line for sports courts in our community? Baseball, softball fields, you name a sport or activity or program, where should we be by national standards? And then where we feel that we should be is another factor, because there's a national thing and then there's the individual needs of the community. And not every community looks the same, right? So those things will be presented so that now we're making informed decisions and our opinions are thinking, we're formulating our opinions with a, I guess, different angle of vision, if you will.
Are y'all gonna account for the number of families y'all ask or no in the survey?
Are we gonna count, like, quantify how many participants for the survey?
How many
Most
families?
definitely, yeah,
Okay.
most definitely. In fact, I see with a lot of master plans, if we don't get the input we need and representation, it sometimes delays the process.
Yeah.
Because it's that important to get that amount of input. And they have target numbers that they look at, the consultant, where we should reach based on community our size. But the more we can get the message out early with your adequacy and education and using platforms like the ISDs, going to our youth advisory councils, going to the different boards and commissions and committees that we have established across the city, using all of our events and recreation programs to broadcast this information. We want to get that as quickly as possible so we can move through the phases.
Isn't there like a city tax or is that just for emergencies?
I'm not sure
Yeah,
how
you
that's
get one if
used.
there's a
or-
storm. It's usually just for emergencies.
Yeah,
To boil water or something?
Yes, fill up the service.
Do you know how long the survey is? I mean, is there sometimes I started taking these surveys and they're just too long.
Yeah.
And some of them go into such detail that, I mean, would we consider maybe doing two? Hey, what do you as a recreational user that'll use it once a month, what do you want? And then, hey, what do you, who wants to start a sports program, want? I don't want us to lose people by asking too much.
Yeah.
And then there's the case of not enough as
you
well.
make an excellent point, and so in most cases, surveys are gonna have multiple rounds for input. You need to hit a threshold to move on to the next, but as I mentioned earlier, having that information about those deltas and deficiencies that exist, where the focus areas are, they come through various phases of the process, and so you want to ask the right questions to engage,
Right,
but you also don't wanna lose
Yeah.
your audience halfway through a survey, because you're right. There've been times where we've all been guilty of checking out
Yeah.
once
The
we're
city
overwhelmed.
has hired a consulting firm, so they should advise us on those kinds of things, I would think.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're paying, what, 250,000 or something? So,
Yeah, we've got all the bells and whistles on this survey, so, but that's good input, and, those are concerns we've also raised.
So for the master plan, we're gonna project in 10 years, we'll have X amount of people, right? So in the event growth is not going up like we're projecting, is there gonna be some sort of like clause of like don't need this much or something of that nature? You know what I'm saying? Like at any point you reassess.
yes,
Your
several
plan.
times in the 10-year period.
Yeah, so you'll see a, update to master plans that a lot of communities do for that very reason, and so that might come in 5-year increments.
So we could potentially scale back or whatever.
Well, you go all in for your 10-year
Yeah.
plan here, but if, now we come to the execution, the living out of the 10 years, and we're coming into year 4, and we're like, our community's not changing the way we expected it by the original survey, then it may be time for an update.
Got it.
Is City Fest the same as Founder's Day? Never mind, they're two different events.
The City Fest is a new event where they come out, departments come out and showcase what they do to the community.
Cool.
It's fun, hope everybody will be
Is it
there.
a work day?
Oh, yes, so.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So at the last park board meeting, you'll ask for an update on the Greg Clark Park soccer fields. So the soccer field at Greg Clark Park is currently under contract with Lone Star Soccer until May 31st of 2029. They use the fields on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 5 to 8, Saturdays 8 to 5. And if there are dates such as when the city Parks Department has special events like the Easter Extravaganza, they work directly with the Parks Department on negotiating and scheduling. We maintain the grass. And as of right now, Lone Star Soccer has non-exclusive use of the field. And so at the last meeting, I misspoke because I was thinking you guys were asking me about Water League, which is open to the public. But Greg Clark Park, that's what the current contract states.
What does that mean non-exclusive?
They're the only ones that can use the field other than the Parks Department. Or their contract.
Are we privy to the information of how much they pay for that field for using that? Or no one else can use that?
They got a deal going all the way to 2029.
Sure.
And they're not paying.
Yeah.
We put our kids in the Lone Star soccer program and pulled them because we were so disappointed.
That contract's been established for quite some time.
Would you all like a report on the contract itself,
Yeah,
maybe in a future meeting?
I would, because I think that,
Okay.
you know, that kind of goes with the whole thing of the sportsplex, because nobody knows about this contract, or to know about it, to know why, unless like, the only reason I kind of was asking about it, because I tried to use it for the CISDs for 6 schools to, you know, to try to play 3 games on there and could not use it.
And I just happened, I was looking at the agenda online today and noticed that, the Parks Department does not have a super great score, like review wise on Google. And I went and read the reviews and all of the negative ones are about not being able to use the fields. They're all about reservations.
So, in the next meeting or two, we'll bring back just a report item on this contract. Just highlight what it entails and give you guys an opportunity to
Sure.
express any concerns at that time.
And then David will be going over the state of the parks address here in just a few moments. And what the Park and Recreation Board will see this evening is kind of a sneak peek at what David's going to present at City Council on Tuesday, September 17th. And we'd love for members of the Park Board to be in attendance if you're able to. The meeting starts at 7 o'clock.
Okay, just some quick hits for the capital improvement plan for the Parks and Recreation Department. I went over the master plan. And we also have parking lots in Steeplechase and Waterleaf that are underway in pre-design. So what that, we call it pre-design or, pre-engineering review process. So we're not really sure of the best use of the park itself to accommodate the parking needs for the current programming. So we've hired a design consultant at a lesser rate. Usually it's within like my approval threshold for funding. And we asked them, what could this be? How do we maximize the amount of parking we can have without encroaching too much into the park programming as it is, but still providing, enough spaces for the existing programming. So consultants will come in, they'll bring in their engineering team, and they'll look at every existing space, and then they'll look at opportunities to expand in a non-programmed area with as little disturbance as possible. And then as we like working through the plan set, we might bring a concept to you guys and say, hey, here's some possibilities based on what the consultant has found. Which of these options would you feel best about? And then we would probably take that also to, even though there's no contract approved at this point, it's all concept, just to make sure that we're on the right track. Take something to council, get their opinion and buy-in as well, before we move to the next more expensive phase, which is full design contract. Where you'll hear them called like 30, 60, and 90% plans. These are construction plans that are ready to go out to bids, a heavy lift for a consulting firm. They're typically 10% of the overall capital construction cost. But these plans are what's actually advertised for contractors to put bids on. And they'll also give what they call an OPCC, an opinion of probable cost of construction. So with each concept, there's pricing assigned to it based on going market rate.
Here's a question.
Sure.
So do you have one separate consultant do the central?
Preliminary engineering.
Yes, you have one consultant doing that, and then you have a second consultant doing the actual design implementation.
Sometimes,
Okay.
but that's actually the rare thing. Usually a consultant you bring on board for preliminary engineering review has the means to take it to full design and construction. The only time that I, in my professional history, have gone to another firm is if I feel like this firm hasn't been the right fit for our needs. And that was discovered through the PER process. So, you're not thinking big enough. Thanks for your concepts of what could be, and let's bring in somebody who has a better rapport and track record with these types of projects. For parking lot construction, there's a lot of great engineering firms that have experience for it. I found one off the rotation list for the civil engineering for public works. We are in desperate need of parking for these two locations. There are a lot of gravel lots or just nodes that are dilapidated. And so, we saw this with existing funding in our CIP as an easy win to get started on right away. So we've already got HDR under PER. We're almost under contract with them. They've submitted the proposal, it's within our budget, and we're gonna move forward with it. Okay, Lineberger, we've also, we have a consultant for pre-engineering review. That project is budgeted at $250,000. But they feel confident that they can give us a good product within that budget for construction documents. And then Lake Kensington Park, that's nature park. And what we're doing for this project is an RFI, which is a request for information. We know that we want it to be a nature park. It's a big piece of property with a lot of potential, as found through an environmental study, feasibility study. And this is a really exciting project because it also has a strong budget for a nature park. I believe it's, we're estimating like 25 million over 5 years. So this might be done in phases, but you can imagine the possibilities that would come with that. You might have fishing piers, you might have nature center, you might have nature play areas, you might have a playground area. And so how do we enhance the nature that's existing on the site? The feasibility study says this is one of the most diverse natural areas that we have on the east side of Kyle. And there's with the exception of some invasives and some wild hogs that would need to be managed, there's a lot of potential for this site. There's a huge body of water that exists here.
Where is it? Where is Lake Kensington?
It's off of Daisy.
Behind the hospital?
Oh, my
It's, yeah, it's northeast of the hospital, off of Daisy. Yeah, if you're looking,
It's somewhere.
Across the street from
Okay.
the entrance before you get to Downing Way on the right-hand side, that property that had the sign out for sale, that's that property.
Oh, okay.
Is the RFI out currently or will it go out?
it's being built right now, so one thing we're gonna send out is that feasibility study that we've already done on the property, so that so what we would do is send it to a number of design firms who have history with and experience with nature parks. And they would come, in looking at the budget and looking at the feasibility study, they would say, here are some great things you could do with this park within these parameters. And then we'll take a look at their submissions. And we're not committed to them by any contract. We're just, and all of that's going to be like a clause within the RFI. This is not a commitment to you. We're not partnering with you. This is, what you're sharing is not proprietary. We're looking for ideas, and if we're interested in if we like the direction you're going, and we feel like it would be a good fit for the city of Kyle and our needs, then we might proceed with next steps on.
So we're still shopping and that, but we have the one already for the master plan, but this is for the Kensington.
This is just for Lake Kensington.
Okay.
Yeah. For the nature.
Request for information.
So this is like,
Asking.
yeah, this is like pre-PER, so this is like a free. We're very early. We just want to make sure we're in the right realm of possibilities for what that space could be. It's such an important project for the city.
Do we get, I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
Do you have a pool of consulting firms that you're already intending to request information from?
We know of some really strong candidates for this project, but the RFI is gonna be open to everybody. So if you feel like this is a good fit for you and your firm, then we want you to respond.
Are we giving them some high-level parameters, like we want to make sure that it's ADA and that it's, the equipment is adaptive for, and, you know, we want paths, we want a water feature, are we giving them those kind of, that kind of information?
Yeah, without going too much in the weeds
Right.
on like putting a damper on their creativity,
Mhm.
we give them very loose parameters to come back with, and we know those are our needs. And then by all contracts, if you're gonna do a certain percentage of construction on a property, you have to fall within ADA compliance.
Right, but I'm also hoping that we can also incorporate more adaptive equipment for our youth and adults.
Yeah,
that
some
may
true
need that.
inclusive and adaptive
Yes,
equipment, yeah, and that's gonna be our standard moving forward. We know like with every community in Texas, there's no question. You want shade over playgrounds.
Yeah,
And you want to have inclusive equipment.
Yeah.
It's included, and you wanna make, I say inclusive and not all inclusive.
Right.
Because most who don't have a full range of abilities, they still want to play with their friends who might be out of their scope of abilities.
absolutely.
We want it to be for everybody.
Which does it cost the city? I know we don't pay the RFI on the company to put it in, but how much does it cost the city to do an RFI, like in terms of, we have to write it, right? So that's the person writing it, we have to review it.
Yeah, it's pretty quick. We have boilerplate, like
Oh, okay.
our, documents that we might use to issue. In advertisement, you might pay $1,000 to get it advertised, so we get the right responses.
Okay.
Yeah, so in the grand scheme of the budget, it barely moves the needle. But this ensures that we do things right. Because versus going to PER, we're not really sure what this can be yet. We'll give this to the experts. The nice thing is we've already paid for this feasibility study on the property, so somebody already went out and did all the analysis on it. So we're like, hey, consultants, take this feasibility study, show us what you can do. Okay, and then Heroes Memorial Park, we have a restroom that we're in pre-design for. We've actually gotten a hold of the original designer and constructor for the park. And so that's they understand the sensitivity of Heroes Memorial. They know all of the MEP, they have all of the survey data because they built the original park. And so they know where the optimal tie-ins are, because early in their process, they were looking at where a restroom could go within the original project. They still carved out a space where a restroom could go in the future, but they can also build to match the park. For us, it was like a no-brainer, and they would do it within the budget. So we like, hey, this is all we have. Normally a company like that wouldn't respond on a project that small. But because they already have stake in the game and it's an award-winning park, it's like their baby.
Yeah.
And so we're like, can you do it within our budget? They were like, because we have those economies of scale built in and we know the park, we feel comfortable with the budget, getting you guys the product you need, the right restroom.
That would be exciting.
Yeah, so that's another one we're waiting on their proposal back, just what they would charge in design fees, but. Plum Creek Trail restroom at Button Trailhead is in design. Mariana, do you want to talk a little more about that one?
Sure, so that, the restroom that's gonna go right there along the Plum Creek Trail, right when you walk through the, Button Creek Playground. It has been in design and will be installed, in December. Water line's been installed, it's ready to go.
Where's it going? Is it going on like when you go into Bowling Creek?
It's on the south side of the Mountain Creek. So you'll, Button Creek, the sidewalk straight to the trail, cross over the creek, and then the restroom will be there.
Cool. I think I've sent you emails. I think I'll make a post in our neighborhood thing, because I think that'll show some buy-in to the neighbors there, since we don't have all the things that got in the neighborhood, so that's. Yeah. And y'all know that it floods over there, right?
Oh, Yeah.
Because sometimes you can't even get at the bridge, if you will, it's too far.
Yeah, it's set back towards a little, how many feet it is that, Public Works, or our building inspector has been out with our, maintenance crew, and our trails crew, and, identified.
And will you have cameras on the bathroom, or no? Like on the outside?
Not,
Yeah, we have a lot of restrooms that we're looking like in next phases, security cameras to have added on, including places like Cool Springs, restrooms where we've had vandalism in the past, but a lot of need, limited budget, so but we're trying to find a place for operational program. Okay, the bike trail, as you all know, is just, that's a big lift. But we have various components that various phases of design built in some cases on the backs of development agreements, and so don't have a ton of details on the vibe, except one area of focus right now is 1626 crossing near the pump station. And maybe at a future date, we'll bring more details on that project. But I think we're still in PER for that one at 30%. One part of the trail system that is not technically vibe, I guess, but is an important maybe component or spine that would tie in is the East Plum Creek Trail. So we have $2 million in city funding and then $2 million in roughly in matching funding from the county. And so this would span from Lake Kyle to Waterleaf Park. So that's the area that's available for that funding and match. And so we're asking the consultant who's at 30% PER, just finishing out PER, to give us a proposal to take this control to full 100% plan set. That's gonna be an expensive plan, you know, even for that short of a run, so we might get anywhere from 2 to 3 miles, which is significant. But we're going through along the Plum Creek, and so we need to make sure that we have the right tree surveys in place, we have the right mitigation plan, that we take the path of least resistance, the most environmentally sensitive route, and then think about the geomorphology of the creek. How is the creek changing? Are the channels shifting? Is it widening in some areas? So you gotta do engineering modeling. There's a lot that comes to it. But on the bright side, we're moving to actual construction documents.
What type of material are you using for the?
For that grant, it's most advantageous for us to use concrete paved trail. And so when you talk about a spine, you always want the spine, they're your most accessible route for the trail. You might have a soft surface trail shoot off of your spine, but that's going to get you in through for everybody. And mostly you want to focus on connecting retail, schools and parks through your spine. The nice thing about that area of Plum Creek, as you all know, is there's a lot of soft surface trails that offshoot. So now you're just bringing people to them. Okay, and then the skate park, we don't have a ton of updates on the skate park, except we're probably gonna have to go back into an engineer design. We can't obtain construction documents right now, they're searching for those. If we could have borrowed from a construction stamped, engineer stamped set of plans, then it might be something that we just use and put out to bid through the proper route. But as of right now, we're still.
In working at the high school, in my department was the skate club sponsor. And I asked him about it, you know, well, what do your kids want? What are they gonna use? And the only thing that he mentioned is don't make it exactly the same as Buda or Lockhart or San Marcos or Seton. It has to be different. So the rubber stamped plans, maybe for some place that's a couple hours away, awesome, but
Yeah.
not someplace that's within
And we'll,
close distance, because then they're not gonna.
that's a good point. What we're gonna have to do with the new consultant is, to get to the place of engineered plans is, we don't wanna throw out all the community input that we've already collected on the project. So we wanna, that's one thing we do have, are the archives of input. So we wanna give this to possibly a new consultant and say, take all of this, do your due diligence in meeting all of these needs that, you know, from all this work that came. And let's bring these concepts back to the park board and to council before we move into full construction plans.
So is the skate park going to be published? Consulting firms?
Yes. Yes,
Do y'all
it'll be,
anticipate doing that?
well, right now, we've got to build in the advertisement specs for it. This one's gonna be, I mean, we have the location for it, we have the input on the front end, and so we've got a little bit of traction there. But, if we find out we absolutely did not have construction documents, which we're almost there to making that determination, then we could advertise probably, because there's already funding, within the next month or so.
Because do we do like InDesign and we came and saw everything?
It was design build, yeah. So the same company that designed it would be the builder for it on the original contract.
I mean, it's not on the agenda, we don't go over it, but.
Yeah.
It just disappeared, thank you. All right. Sorry.
Okay, and then, Mariana, maybe you can give an update on the, holiday decor RFP.
Alrighty, the RFP for the holiday decoration is closed. The evaluators on the review panel are currently reviewing the submissions. And then we'll meet at the end of this week, go over with our purchasing department. And then in September 17th, purchasing plans to take the contracts to council for approval as far as what pieces we might purchase this year or lease, and who might be installing the stuff. Full speed ahead designing it, so that it'll be ready to go by November.
End of it. Whenever y'all. I mean,
This might be an idea for next year, but you may be able to get like people in the city to create their own decorations to go along with all the ones that. To get like buying the city or whatever. Cause could see people getting real creative with.
And this year, we'll be decorating Mary Kyle Hartson again, Lake Kyle Park, and then the city's main corridor.
And Lord.
Oh, yes, yeah, great.
All right, Amy?
Yes, so we are currently working on our 2025 calendar. I have the special events manager and also the division recreation manager reviewing to make sure the details are correct so that we didn't duplicate anything or have anything scheduled on the same day. So we are looking to complete that by the end of this week for the 2025 outlook. And then the first event that we will have will be the Polar Bear Splash on January 1st. Registration will open in November for the Polar Bear Splash, and if you register between a certain time, you get a hoodie for your participation. And then we also partner with For the Love of Go to also with their 5K, and then they bring in their runners after that. So it's a tradition that's been going on well over 5 years. So because we have a lot of people come in with their hoodies from years ago. But yeah, so we will give more of an update in a future meeting regarding upcoming. 2025.
Do they run before or after?
They run and then they run.
Okay.
And then the weather just depends, honestly, it's either really cold or really hot. I've been part of both.
It's a lot, it's a ton of fun, and the participants that are in the race, they're so excited to do the splash.
That's,
We're gonna receive a report and hold a discussion and provide staff recommendation regarding 3 possible candidates to serve the grant.
I think we missed that. Number 3,
Oh, we did the state of the park.
right? We did number 2. now
Oh,
we're-
there's another state of the park, sorry about that.
Oh.
Receive a report and hold a discussion and provide staff direction on state of the parks.
Right. This is gonna be a lot of information, and I'm gonna try to move through as quickly as possible. Remind everybody that there's more information to come at the September 17th council meeting, because this is gonna be like during that fire goals right now. All right. So quick overview, we're gonna do a SWOT analysis, we're gonna talk about strategies to address and SWOT is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So we're gonna talk about strategies to shore up any potential weaknesses or threats that we have. We're gonna talk about efficiencies and cost reductions to cover the strategies. And then CIP, we're just gonna peruse quickly because we went over that in our departmental updates. And we'll give you opportunity for questions and feedback. Okay, everybody can see that but me probably. I'm way at the back of the room, but okay, there we go. All right, so just to focus on strengths and weaknesses for now. We're really good, and this is the parks maintenance one, by the way. In parks maintenance, we're really, I feel like we're well funded. We've got a lot of positions and a lot of potential that exists. We've got good equipment. We've got GIS, a lot of technology like Cartograph that I was really excited to see when I came in. And so I come in and you tour parks, you meet with staff, you look at inventories, and you try to find those wins that are available. Because in any system, you're going to find weaknesses. This is my now 4th agency I work for in my short 20+ year career, and every agency has weaknesses. You don't always have as much opportunity. I've experienced where I have a lot of challenges and not a lot of funding or potential leverage. So I was very delighted to see that with all of the weaknesses, we do have opportunities. So areas of weakness, we have, our staff needs more training and development. We need to send them to more conferences. We need a structured plan, and we need a winter work plan. We don't have a lot of projects. Historically, we spent a lot of time on Christmas within Kyle. So the parks were sort of abandoned for a few months. And then you come back in the winter time, the springtime, and there's a lot of, I hate to use the word deficiencies, but there's a lot of threats and dangers that exist out there because they weren't addressed in the off season. The key part of the winter is that you stop mowing. The grass isn't growing. So you do things like, you identify needs throughout the growing season, like, hey, we've got a lot of underbrush here. These athletic fields need some love and renovation. We need to install some new benches and budget those. We didn't have spending plans by the park system. And so we've got to build those so you can manage your budget properly. You need to build needs inventories for your park system. You need to build 5-year plans because we can't afford to replace everything at once. And so where are our bleeding wounds out of the system? Those don't exist. And so we said, hey, we got to start building that up. We need to look at the age of our playgrounds to see if they're over their useful life, any safety hazards that exist out there. And as you can imagine, we did find those things. Inefficiencies within the way we operate. We had certain equipment that was out in parks, like large mowers that were maybe mowing for one day. And these are really expensive mowers. So I was excited to see we had them in the first place, but they were assigned to the park. And so you use them for one day because they were at that park. When you finish mowing that park, they just sit. And so we started thinking like, hey, what if we ran these mowers 4 days a week, 5 days a week, and they did nothing but mow our large areas, and we just employed them to go 6 hours a day, as hard and as fast as they're able to safely. And what could be possible? How much resources would we really free up to do other things that we need to be doing in our park system? We have weaknesses in inventory control, a lot of sign clutter. There's no park standards. Like hey, if this bench was on sale or this sign made sense because somebody said, hey, a dog was off leash right here. And we put a sign right there that says keep your dogs on leash. And so when there's sign cluttered, nobody's paying attention to the messaging anymore because it just becomes, the environment becomes saturated. So it's ineffective. So strategically looking at our system holistically. Okay, also we have things like non-centralized fleet that it's more than a park and recreation thing. It's a citywide thing. I will say for every problem identified, there was a solution at least tethered to it, within some distance. Okay, let's go to the next one, which I think is beautification. Most of the same weaknesses with beautification, except maybe we talk a little bit more about managing invasives and pests that affect our right of ways. We talk more maybe about horticulture and gateway landscaping. We have contracts that we use now, and we don't feel like we're getting the most bang for our buck from these contracts because we lack internal processes like inspections. And so contractors, if they know that you don't have the resources to follow up and to enforce it, or the contract isn't written with the proper teeth to enforce and really hit them in the pocketbook, they cut the corner on you. Kyle, not being like Austin or Dallas, major city, they serve multiple customers. And so they underbid some projects, they overbid others. And so when they find the gazelle out there, that's where they'll choose to cut their corners so they can recover where they might have underbid somewhere else. And we found within our system, Kyle was that gazelle. And so we said, hey, what could we do to start really getting the most bang for our bucks out of our contracts? And the simplest thing to do is to build inspections. So you might, and even with staff who doesn't have a trained eye. So we talked earlier about the lack of training, and that's on us. We haven't invested in our team properly. But again, tether the solution to it, and we can build inspection forms that will tie into walking them through like a bleeding wound that's out there. Like if you see a plant, for instance, that's wilting, identify it, stop, ask about, is this plant properly watered? Is there an irrigation issue? Is there a disease? Is this plant in the right place? Is this a shade plant that we have planted in the full sun? Is this plant adapted to this Central Texas environment? It just triages through and takes the guesswork out of it, but it always ties it back to a solution. And then a supervisor or manager will sign off on this. And so we again, that's applicable to both parks and beautification. All right, next slide. Okay, same with trails, except trails go through a lot of environmentally sensitive areas, like well, I mentioned along creeks, through our forest, and through some of our wildflower prairie areas. One thing with trail building is like without proper training, if you're cutting into trail with amazing equipment that we own and a very enthusiastic staff that has a lot of skill and potential. I mean, I was so impressed when I saw things that our trails teams did, like within limited resources to build interpretive programs for a nature area. And I said, this is amazing. Like, what if we can just give them some more resources and give them more trainings? We're going to get a big return from this group. Also teaching them like the dangers of cutting in too much to a trail area, especially in the floodplain, and creating erosion issues. Some of our trails, our paved trails even, have a lot of undermining that's occurring because of maybe some engineering deficiencies. It's no different in Kyle than it is with most park systems. Sometimes it's like, hey, this makes sense to put this here, this is a need right now. But in early days of engineering design, didn't do the modeling for creeks and how the creeks change. And so, I mean, you see this everywhere. Even the most established park systems have these demons that they fight. In Dallas, we had a lot of, I mean, millions of dollars of trails that would be net through erosion. And so I was pleased to say here we didn't have a lot experiencing that. But it's like, how do we circumvent or shore up those threats? And it's going to be through the things we talked about earlier in re-engineering review. And then how do we stop the bleeding? Like if we can't afford to replace this trail now, there are things that we can do in training staff on how to properly build, but also how do you mitigate the threat of undermining? Do you use riprap to slow it down? Do you build riparian areas? Maybe tell the community about what the purpose of a riparian, maybe what a riparian area is. So they don't just see this as weeds growing in a park that we've neglected potentially. Okay, next slide. Okay, capital projects, just, the CIP is, really difficult to navigate and nail down. You've got several iterations you might find online of the capital improvement plan. I think maybe historically the park staff didn't have a whole lot of assistance maybe that was needed from, just a city growing really fast. Protocols are changing, staffing can't keep up with demand, so you might have finance teams that are struggling to build to give us the proper information. They know, finance knows how they like to look at things, but it's not necessarily useful for park and recreation. And so, we found a lot of that here, and so we've been working with finance to say, hey, this is great for, sort of the, back end use, and these numbers make sense to you all. But once we get these budgets approved, like, how do we make it user friendly so that staff can manage and operate from these? We may not need to know all the individual buckets that go into this fund. We just need to know what's applicable to this project and what overall has been approved. And then we can work from that within those guardrails. Just so financially keep us safe from using funds that aren't eligible for this project, and we'll manage how it's used, and stay compliant. We didn't have an O&M process here, which again, isn't something that is unique to Kyle. A lot of communities don't, put an emphasis on operations and maintenance. That's what O&M stands for, by the way, pardon the acronym. But, like, hey, when we build something, as much as we talk about the budget for capital construction, we need to talk about how much it's gonna cost to maintain this. So we, through the master plan, identified all of the needs for Kyle. We also need to identify the maintenance that's gonna be required. How many staff do you need to bring on board for this? And so, one illustration would be, if we're building a dog park, we want to make sure that we build the dog park right, so we need design standards. What should our dog parks in Kyle feature at minimum? You need fences, you need off-leash areas, but you also need, which I see at our park, but you also need things like a mow strip. So dogs are gonna dig, dogs are gonna be dogs, and this is their part. And so build a mow strip so they don't dig under the fences and escape. And also that you have something to tether to the fence itself, so that dogs don't escape. It's a little more expensive to build, but it should be a minimum standard for a dog park. Shade structures, you gotta think about the quality of turf, the irrigation, all of these things that a lot of cities have just learned over the years. We take all of those lessons learned in case studies, and we take consultant recommendations and we build design standards for our community, so that these projects will last for 20 years like they're intended to. A needs inventory, so that's something we didn't have here, where we say, every time somebody calls and says, hey, we should have this, we should have that, or every public input process, every playground that's out of service date, every aging, furnishing, pavilion, you name it, restrooms, what's the in-service date for that? How long is it supposed to last? Are we reaching the end of useful life? And if so, it needs to make a list to show a need for capital, because we can't afford to replace this stuff with operational budgets. So what you do with the needs inventory is every time there's gonna be a bond, or there's gonna be some issuing of, CO bonds, in any capital funding source, council members and park board members can look at the needs inventory and say, these are things that need replacement in our system now or in the next few years, and this is how much they cost. And so you have this menu of options, and you know your budgets to work with, and you can properly allocate based on the true need in our system. Not just getting new things, but taking care of what you already have. Okay, and then a lot of things we've already talked about in design and all of the phases to ensure your project is properly built. Okay, services, most of the weaknesses that we've seen were from not having adequate programming space. So we're competing for space within within schools. We have a lot of great programming, but there's a lot more ideas that still exist that haven't come to fruition just because we lack the space. When we look at our aging park assets like ball fields that they need some love and replacement. And so the less we have of those available, the less recreation has to use and leverage. And recreational program isn't intended to be like this high barrier to entry, high cost, competitive play. Recreation, our market is low barrier to entry, something for everybody. It might be entry level, it might be something just to do leisurely. And so there's a market here for that a lot of outside entities aren't really competing for, because there's not a profit to gain from that. So these are subsidized programs that are used, I mean, just general funds recreation program. And so we don't always get full cost recovery. We try, but this is definitely a high value, low cost alternative for everybody, is how we see it. We could go a lot farther if we had the resources, which are really expensive to obtain, and that's a capital need. So we can't, to go and build a gym or to build, a programming space, not something you can just do, or it's not always available. Same, so all of our aquatics programs would fall into the same boat. You're limited in what you can do because we have an outdoor pool only. There's no indoor pool, so we can't do the year-round stuff. We had a separation of aquatics coordinator staff, and the pool maintenance tech was on the park side. So we said, hey, what if we just team those up, and maybe it would make more sense. So again, with all of these, like even standards of care, like how do we standardize, like how many participants per instructor should we be targeting? And it's just something you need to reevaluate probably annually. But again, nothing that's super alarming, just some needs that are out there that we feel we need to tie solutions to. And business and strategic planning. So I talked to you guys earlier about all of data and O&M and about inspection processes, even our boards and commissions management processes, where you guys have seen some recent changes and things, and we've worked, and after every, Daisy, we met with you recently after a board meeting to get feedback on, hey, what should we focus on moving forward? Where could we improve on what we present and the quality of our presentations and the time of things, making sure things get on the agenda that you all are requesting. And anyway, working with the team, that's primarily been a lift from Mariana and myself. We both feel that the direction we're going is becoming really efficient. So we're going to continue down the path, but also building business models for how we manage the various divisions within parking and recreation to get lumped in the whole. Again, getting that holistic view of operations, but also data. The data, are we getting data from things? Are we using a work order system to acquire our performance? Are we on target? How do we evaluate? When do we evaluate? How do we tell a story to come back to you all and say, hey, here's how we're performing as a system. Here's where we're weak at. Here's our plan to mitigate those threats that are out there. How do we start positioning ourselves to be an award-winning agency that employs best practices, and then working towards what the accreditation in our field is CAPRA, and that is the Commission for Accreditation for Park and Recreation Agencies. And that says you're probably within the 2% of all the highest performing park and recreation agencies in the country, and you comply to, is it 151 standards, I think, of compliance, everything from how we manage special events and emergencies and public safety, maintenance, facility, fleet management, human resources, you name it. There's a whole bunch of fronts of compliance, and those policies and standards have to be built. And that was an area of weakness that we just didn't have staff to make that lift. You have all these other needs that are out there, but this is something that will get ahead of you if you don't carefully manage it. But in order to build out for the future, this is essential. All right, next. Okay, and so for park maintenance, we said, okay, we have a work order system and a cartograph that's coming. Let's build schedules and let's put them into the work order system so that we develop these schedules one time, and it's the give that keeps on giving. If we say, hey, our park should be mowed at, we first started with like ideal standards, and we said, how often should we mow a part of this usage that is a community park by NRPA standards? Ideally, if we could afford anything. And that we were saying, hey, we said we should mow parks weekly here. And then we looked at restrooms. How often should we clean restrooms? If we had all the money in the world, we said, well, ideally, we should look at restroom maintenance daily. So we went through playgrounds. Ideally, for a true, full range inspection for playgrounds, how often should we conduct an inspection? We said, ideally, we would love to do that weekly. These are all best management practices for park and recreation agencies. And then we backed into our service level. So we said, these are our ideal service levels. What can we actually afford with our existing resources? So we started evaluating our staff, our equipment, our parks inventories, and we realized, hey, 9 out of 10 times we can meet these needs with existing staff. If we just reprogram and maybe reshuffle things around. I talked to you guys about the mowing example for the large area. And so we're gonna be talking about at the city council meeting what those standards are and level of service for the city of Kyle. But I just kind of gave you guys a spoiler on what we're able to do. But these are things that I haven't been able to do just based on budgeting in my previous life. So we're very fortunate here that we're gonna be able to do some amazing things. It's gonna be, in some cases, we're gonna have to bring in staff that has immediate expertise. Staff like pesticide applicators who are licensed in landscape, licensed irrigators. Those are really hard to find, but you need somebody skilled to build and maintain your irrigation and to check them on a routine basis. You're not wasting water. You're not killing your plants aren't dying that we're spending a lot of money on that make our gateways and parks really attractive and feel safe. Also, like conservation experts that can help, train existing staff, build up training programs, build those performance standards that we alluded to earlier. There's as expensive as it is, we're going to talk to you all about how we found funding in evaluating inefficiencies. Okay, and for CIP, there's already a lot of technology that's being used in the city and other departments like Nearmap, like ArcGIS, that we're going to incorporate in Parks and Rec so we can properly build out CIP and manage it. Also using this data to tell stories and provide updates on capital improvements in Kyle. All right, next slide. Recreation services, we have we're going to launch, right, Amy? I guess, Rec Desk just before October. I think it's right at the end of September will be our official launch date. There's gonna be more updates to come on that. One thing that we've talked about is that we don't do the best job of promoting the great things that we're doing out there. And some of it's just, again, for the same reasons. Staff's busy doing other things. They have special events, they have parks that they're maintaining. And so in finding efficiencies, we said, how do we partner with communications to do better with our promotions? Telling people our story, telling people the great things that we're doing, getting people excited about all these technological advancements that are gonna make booking with us a lot easier. Just this week, I heard complaints about booking and reserving certain events and signing up to be a participant in the gingerbread house contest. These are things that Rec Desk is going to solve for us. So be on the lookout because we'll be trickle feeding the coming soon updates on this great software program that we're going to be using. And the nice thing is that was already in queue. I think the recreation team had this sort of on the back burner because it just hadn't been made a priority, not by Park and Recreation, but by what we were doing in other citywide goals and objectives. And so this was dusted off, brought forward, and then turbocharged, and now it's ready to go. Okay, and so the other thing is we want to continue to integrate inclusion into our programs. So we have Miranda, who is a therapeutic recreation specialist, and we were we all realized we're not using her to her full potential. And so on the park side, we said, how do we get her involved in reviewing the capital improvement projects? When we look at park plans, construction documents, and put that inclusive lens on it. Yeah, we have registered accessibility specialists and great consultants, but somebody who works for Kyle, who serves as the community of Kyle that has special needs, looking at it from that angle and offering that kind of input and saying, these are the types of programs, if we make these adjustments to the way we design the park, we can accomplish. So again, an ongoing theme that you're gonna hear is reducing barriers to entry, making parks and programming accessible for our entire community. Okay, also, we talked about social media and really revamping our website to be more user friendly. Okay. Next slide. Okay, business and strategic planning. I talked to you guys a lot about the streamlining of our workflow for our boards and commissions. But we want to build dashboards to report in on to tell us how we're doing, to tell you all how we're doing. We want it to be so user friendly and so relevant that it's easy for us to see, just like your own dashboard on your vehicle, your instrument panel says you're low on fuel. And not just to look at the lag measure, which would be like, hey, you're low on fuel. That's the lag measure, right? The lead measure was the why. Why are you low on fuel? Are we over driving our vehicle? The best illustration I can think of, you guys, I apologize to the team because they've probably heard this a million times, but it's like your weight loss. Like the lag measure is what you see on the scale. What can you do to change it once you see it? Nothing can affect that except for the lead measures, which are going to be, calories lost and calories brought in. If you can manage those things, now you have an effect on the weight that you see when you step on the scale. And so we want to see our performance standards that way. Okay. What are those indicators that show that we're doing things right? If we're building our dashboards correctly, we can say, hey, there's a red flag here. Something's got to give. Let's evaluate this. Let's tie a solution to it. And then let's check in regularly. Okay. And then we have a lot of needs, as I mentioned earlier, and we're going to need hundreds of thousands of dollars to accomplish getting those weaknesses shored up in terms of bringing in staff and maybe even upgrading existing staff, especially our frontline field staff. Where we found savings were back to the contracts. Said, hey, we're spending a lot of money and getting very little from that. Now that we found these efficiencies, and if we give staff the proper training and the proper inspections, what can these contractors do that our staff couldn't do? Very little to none. And so, in fact, we found we can actually probably perform better than the contractors. And so let's bring these services back in-house and let's find $455,000 in savings to go towards bringing in experts to continue to build us up and to take us to the next level even. So we'll talk more, but we looked at the beautification contracts for the right-of-ways, the right-of-way mowing. And so Chance and his team have done a great job evaluating the current demand for right-of-way mowing. And we said, hey, not every one of these properties that we manage right-of-way should be mowed every week. In fact, they had some funding cut from them. They lost their contracts. So they learned to live without the contract. And he found that Chance and his team found that everything was mowed at a 2-week average. So every other week is being mowed during the growing season. So you went from 40 cycles down to like 20 cycles per year. So it was like, hey, nobody's complaining about our areas. They're actually maintained well, even during the rainy season. They look really nice. It's better than what I experience in my communities, the other communities that I work for that have right-of-ways to manage. And so we said, okay, what if we even go a step further and say there's some other properties on the outskirts that probably don't need to be mowed even bi-weekly, but can get through with a rough cut monthly mowing and tree trimming. And we said, what would those properties be? What would they look like? And then we said, what about our high visibility corridors? We have a lot of traffic, pedestrian and visitor, and you might be walking along trails. Can we get those back down to weekly? And so Chance and his team continued to sift and shake and refine. And they said, yes, these are all the properties that are on high visibility corridors, high traffic, high recreation areas that we can actually get down, basically improve service on. And still the savings, because we're not hiring our contractor back.
So in realizing those savings, we're not now asking our staff who's been with us to do 2 jobs, right?
Right.
Like they're still just have a day's worth of work and not like a really long list.
Yes. Essentially, a lot of scheduling went into it, and I sat down with my crew lead and we were evaluating Because basically when we took over the Brightview contract, we were looking at an additional over 100 acres, but it's a linear acre. It's not a park acre. So it's a little bit different layout to where it's almost in mileage. But we were able to, like David was saying, to condense them down and change the strategy of strategic mowing to fit the schedule to incorporate what we're doing. We were doing less acreage at 44 cycles a year. When we first took over Brightview, we dropped down to 17, but we've since evaluated and got them back up to standard to where we can do the 26 cycles.
I just don't wanna lose good people, cause we gave
Yeah.
them, you know what I mean, like, we can't afford it, so now we give you extra work.
In fact, so
We wanna keep all
the
the.
mowing example that I used earlier is like, hey, all of our properties, are so we look at a stat, like, the schedule just for mowing. And we say, okay, are these locations that we're mowing today for this crew, are they all close to each other? Are they spread out across the city? Are we bouncing around, wasting fuel time? Are we sending staff to go to Lowe's or Home Depot to buy a part they need daily instead of inventorying and buying in bulk at the beginning of the year, so that everything is warehoused that they need, so they don't have to stop what they're doing, shut down equipment, load equipment up, go to the store, drive back. Those are the efficiencies we're identifying. And then I was pleased to see, in talking to the field staff about some of these things, they came, before I even announced it, they were coming to me saying, could we start buying in bulk? Because we waste a lot of time, and we're like, yeah, we figured as much, but they were concerned about that. What staff don't know, unless they're watching this now, is a lot of them are gonna be in line for upgrades, because we're like, hey, you're running a crew, you're driving a truck, you're doing things like leading. You're already doing the job. So looking at bringing them to where their skill is at. Some staff who are skilled in operating equipment, we might say, hey, by most city requirements, you're at a worker two standard. If we can afford to upgrade them because of their skill set, like somebody who can drive a large area mower and the trailer that goes with it, you should really be here. And so trying to reward them and incentivize them and compensate them for the duties that they've really taken on, without any complaint. They've been doing it. And so that was a big part of the cost increase. Yeah. Just, I mean, and what the savings would be used for. Okay, I don't think we need to touch on this. Cover everything there. And there. Okay, and it's just quick hits. I talked to you guys about the Cartograph's just the work order system for getting our schedules in. So it's like, hey, let's do the schedule one time, let's feed it to Cartograph and have somebody input it in the system. So that if Steeplechase Park is mowed every Monday on 7-day cycles, and it just shows up as a work order for the staff on their tablet or their phone. They finish it, they say I was here from 8 AM to 12 PM. And it was these 3 employees times that many hours, and it calculates their equipment. They hit the close button for the mowing work order. It goes into the system, and then Chance or anybody else would go in and say, hey, how much money are we spending in mowing as of today, mowing Steeplechase or the entire park system? How much money are we spending maintaining this athletic field or all of the athletic fields in our system? It's a great resource to show how we're using general funds and just operational funds, and where we're missing cycles at. How many work orders got canceled due to rain or the inability to perform? Or are we spending too much time on this property and missing somewhere else? It's just a number of things we could do with the data showing what we're accomplishing. Or, hey, how can we, if you really love what you're doing here and you want to take it to the next level, what would it cost to go to take 14-day cycle right-of-ways to 7-day properties or something like that, depending on how things are developing around us. We can make informed decisions based upon what we put into the system. And I talked to you guys about reporting and promotions as well, so. That was a lot. Wish a short amount of time, but thank you all for your patience and questions. Are there any additional questions?
I have a question about contracts. Do you guys have a contract team for the city, or does each division, like Parks and Rec, have their own contract person?
There's by contract person.
So like, I work for the federal government and we have, per department, you have a person that manages those contracts. So like here, is it departmental, I guess, who manages contracts, or is there like, is contracts a department in itself?
Contracts isn't an department itself. You might have purchasing and legal that helps you build the contract. But when it comes to using the contract, once it's been executed, that is based on the department or even the division. And so it's a divide and conquer strategy. We don't have, usually suburbs don't have the funding for one person to be fixed on one contract. And the contracts are so relatively small in the grand scheme of things that it's a percentage of a manager's job to ensure that contractors are compliant with what's in their contract and the city's getting the services that we're paying for.
And second question on that, so if you have essentially a program manager managing the contract, if they're doing inspections, do you have typically, like, do you build that in purchase order to have the vendor be like, hey, you build us a quality checklist, and then, because that can eliminate some of the training for the staff that needs to audit, is if you're putting that onus on the vendor to create that checklist.
Yeah, so like Brightview, for instance, they're required to submit checklists on our contracts. They did it also for another agency I worked for, same contractor, same checklist, but then you don't build the teeth into the contract to properly hold them to it. Then there's not a lot you can do to punish them for, withholding payment. Yeah, so you gotta, and that's what I mean, like building the right teeth in. But if we take the contract specs and deliverables and put them into our inspections, now we're not asking them to do anything that's not already in their contract. The staff knows exactly what they're rating them on. They're given criteria. Staff just goes and say, did they pull the weeds? Did they mow? Is it this height? Is there signs of abuse on this property? Did they inspect the irrigation? So they can go back behind them and hold accountable. Now, we've minimized most of our contracts. One supplemental contract we'll have will probably be for right-of-way, TxDOT right-of-way supplemental mowing, which means like TxDOT only comes seasonally and not at our standards, come twice a year, Chance says, and they come at their schedule. And it's flexible. We don't know an exact date. And so we're like, hey, let's
show up.
if we want that service on at least a monthly basis, let's build in and fund. If that's 10 cycles per year, we did monthly during the growing season, and they're doing 2, let's build in 8 cycles that we would pay for just to keep visibility visibility at standard and turf at a safe height.
If I could add to that, just to David's point, I went through the same situation with contracts at the school district and when I was working for the maintenance department there, and they tried subletting some of the contracts out, and what they found is that when they had needs and things like that, you're not gonna get it on a schedule that you're there. So if we train staff and we do it on our end, then we have people that are there every day, can put eyes on it and can do it on a daily basis, but could also be used in other aspects. So once we eliminate that contract, as you can see, it was 455,000. We can train our staff, plus add new staff that are irrigation specialists and things like that, that can build us to that standard. Because a lot of what we're getting out of the contracts was arborists, things like that we didn't have. So that was the main reason behind it originally, 4 or 5 years ago. But building that into staff is gonna help us just further.
And
just
that's a
provide better
great
service.
point that I think Chance brought up, because
Yeah.
contractors, they stop mowing when they stop mowing. We have staff that can be devoted to winter projects too, and our staff serves one customer, City of Cotton. Any other questions?
And it's regarding contracts, and I'll be done. So like as an example, if we're getting an engineer to give us a design of the trail, right? And it turns out the trail is too close to the creek and it's eroding. Is the onus on their plan because they're the experts and there's erosion? How does that work? Like, are they held accountable for their plans if it turns out it wasn't environmentally sound?
What you usually find is like, so with plan sets from a contractor, it's like they're gonna bring surveyors out and everything is engineered, like the grades are engineered, the elevations are engineered pre and post construction. The only time I've seen a discrepancy is if a contractor comes in and shoots their own surveys and says, hey, these are inaccurate, because by the math, if it's built at that engineering grade, they're running these things through models too, the engineering firms. Models based on all the data available, annual rainfall, existing elevations. Engineers look at what's upstream, how it's affecting everything around. They look at things differently, right, through their models. And so I haven't seen a case where the engineering was bad. There might be a disagreement between the contractor on an elevation occasionally, but that's the beauty of having this like double check system because they're always gonna shoot their own surveys first. And in that rare case is when you'll find an inaccuracy. I think it's happened one time in my entire career. And it wasn't actually an engineer that, it was an architect, it's architectural firm that probably overstepped their bounds on a grade.
I'm mainly asking this, again, with my experience with contracts, the, like, citizens don't really know the difference between a city employee and a contractor, so they represent us, right? So if they're not doing things to a certain standard, and we're not auditing them, they're gonna think it's the city
Yeah.
versus the contracts, right?
Yeah, because most of the time it's not, when there's an issue, it's not with the engineering side of it, it's did the contractor build according to the construction documents? We have seen that, and those things your inspectors catch. Your inspectors catch, because they're gonna run, as soon as forms are set up, they're gonna take their digital levels, and they're gonna make sure that the grades are accurate. And then you have the registered accessibility specialists, especially on your, like your paved and accessible improvements. They're going to say, hey, at this engineered plan set, the engineered plans are compliant with ADA. That's their pre-sale. Go ahead and proceed. And then by their contract, they come back for their second round, which is now I'm gonna review it once it's constructed to make sure that it's ADA compliant. So contractors also shoot grade. A lot of times your design firms will also shoot grade after it's done, just to make sure. There's a lot of checks that are put in place, you know, your contractors, city staff and inspectors, and then your design consultants. That doesn't mean to say that things are caught.
Right.
Because, yeah, you know, and you just hope that, that's why you want to catch things when the forms are built and not once concrete's poured.
Any other questions? We'll receive a report and hold a discussion and provide staff recommendation regarding 3 possible candidates to serve as grand marshal for the 2024 Founders Day parade.
I think everybody has a handout. Have y'all had a chance to look at that, or? But you put.
Sorry.
Yeah, overall today, as you guys know, on the July Parks Board meeting, you guys made a motion to change the processing of how we select the grand marshals. Today, we're seeking, your recommendation for one, local representative for the Veterans Day Parade to go to, the next council meeting. And give, input on the consent agenda. All right, go ahead.
Has everybody had a chance to read over the candidates?
I'd like to nominate Carl.
I second.
Me too.
All in favor of Carl being recommended grand marshal?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Who's the first?
It was
And
I'm not.
Duhon and then.
Just quickly, he's 98 years old.
He's 97.
But
He
there's
served in
videos
Korea.
dancing, I
He
mean,
went to
He still drives,
I
he
think
has
he
an
deserves
Apple
it.
phone, he answers his phone while he's driving.
I think that's Hazel.
So just to reiterate what Amy said, so at the September 3rd council meeting, we will, by resolution, take this recommendation for Carl to council for on consent agenda.
All right, we're going to receive a report and hold a discussion, provide staff feedback regarding the National Fitness Campaign article.
So, today I'm just gonna go over, just a reminder, you know, that this project has been ongoing, but back in 2021, the fitness court, we received the grant for the National Fitness Court. And then, so next, we're trying to install, you guys select the location, and we chose on Lake Kyle as a location for the install. So today I'm seeking board feedback on the artwork designed by the program coordinator, Rachel Ostrander, which is in staff in-house with us. So this is some general outline.
The only one.
This is the general outline that, and there's other kind of guidelines that Rachel has to abide by, but overall, so the NFC reserves the right to make suggestions and approve and reject any design. artwork is to follow the NFC standards, cannot reference playgrounds or young children, and that is for the purpose that the fitness court is not for youth. It is geared towards adults. They don't want to put any children on the artwork and then kind of cause any paths that don't confuse anybody really. So the artist is to provide a back and front wall art zone, and it can be similar in design, but it must match the overall theme. Selected artists will collaborate with the NFC artwork for the fitness court. So this step is really to get the artwork over to NFC. So we want your feedback, and we're also going to take it to council for their feedback as well. But this is the main piece for us to get started on construction.
This is a question. I thought the equipment was like, it's built into the ground, right?
Yes.
So what wall?
So there's a back. Here it is, right here.
Oh, so it's gonna be constructed. along with- Oh, I was like, I've never seen just a wall.
Yeah, so we'll pour the concrete and then we'll get a construction company to come on in and install the actual system.
So are you asking for recommendations on art direction?
So we have some direction already. So this is the art that Rachel has come up with general, we were looking for the nature theme to go along with Lake Kyle. And it's kind of hard to see. This is a really large wall. So some details you can't see in this smaller image, but
What dimension of the wall, sorry, I don't know.
was that
What's the dimension of the wall?
dimension of the wall is here. 384 inches. Which
That's-
was equate to,
Two, yeah.
is that right? Okay, so 30,
Where it enclose the tool thing on the side. Where it says welcome.
this is the overall part.
And what's the height?
Height is 85.75.
7 feet. That's a big wall.
So this is the general outlook. So if this was her design, you'll see the fitness court label. That's the inside of the fitness court. The artwork will actually go on the outer portion. And then two sides. One of them will be a bio for the artist with some information, and then also a smaller piece of artwork to correlate with the themes.
Yeah, so those dimensions you see in that far right rectangle, that's the wide dimension.
Okay.
So here is her. And so back here, these individuals are flying a kite. You see the water tower, she was trying to get in some nature aspects, so walking and then running on the trail. She did add in some animals, so you have a turtle down here in this area. It's hard to see, sorry, but it's really great if I can really zoom in, but I could figure I get the more pixelated to look at.
Where's the pie?
Person on that bench.
The pie? Nope. I did not go with the pie.
We
But
need
then
at least
also
a pie.
vegetarian.
Sign or something.
We might be going into rebranding, so we didn't want to
Okay.
bring a pie to the design, but she did incorporate the train and then the fishing pier at Lake Kyle. And then she also incorporated the windmills.
The bunnies.
Yes.
There's a person leaving.
And then the cranes. Do you have up there?
My only comment is I wish that the water tower was more prominent.
Yeah.
Just because that's such a,
If the water tower and the windmill.
one of them were switched, yeah, like the one in the middle.
So I would only say just to remember why if we replace one of them, the windmills are on that section of the lake from the pier. So those are actually aerators for the lake. That's probably why she put them there, just.
Sure.
That makes
Just
sense.
when you're looking at it from that section, that's where they are located.
Maybe instead of somebody laying down, a couple
Yeah.
sitting,
I'm sorry, I didn't.
instead of somebody laying down, maybe a
Sitting?
couple sitting. Conversating.
It says Austin under the bridge for me. That those knees sticking up on that. I'm sorry.
I mean,
Maybe either, oh, go ahead.
I mean, is this her, I mean, it's It's only, I'm only getting her to put on, you know what I mean?
She wants honest feedback.
Okay.
Yeah, I would tend to agree that we don't need a person sleeping on a bench.
I would like a couple, like, talking, chatting.
They're back of their heads.
Any other thoughts? Additions?
Hot air balloons, no longer a thing.
I wouldn't say that that's necessarily the thing we're going with, just because again, we're going through that future rebranding. So I think we might see.
I just thought of this morning, Dr. Kyle.
Yeah.
We need somebody out there barbecuing, keep the heat up.
Yeah. Okay.
The only other thing I can think of is I don't get kite.
And it's kind of odd, I don't think you look at that and necessarily think kite.
Well, it's gonna be,
The
those
kite
kites are about
string
4
is-
feet tall.
So thick.
Yeah, they don't
It's
like
like
kites.
Yeah.
I would say that you would probably be able to see
On
what
a
it is.
wall,
on
it's
a
not gonna be
sub-
flat, I think it isn't the top, like half a Y.
I'm sorry.
Half of a Y.
Yeah.
The top, we're only
I
gonna
mean,
see
in
half of the
the, in
water.
the dimensions up there, it showed like it's gonna go up and then it, let's see.
Kind of like,
So the kites will be
Yeah.
Make it three-dimensional.
3-dimensional, if you will.
All right. Any other feedback?
Couple fire ants.
I was like, do you?
Our integrated pest management will
Yeah.
We need them to be wearing t-shirts that say I'm with Kyle.
Oh, my name's Kyle.
So, anyone wanna make a motion to, oh, we didn't motion on that?
It's just feedback. I think, we were just getting feedback. Yeah, sorry. So I have the notes here. I think we're good. So, changing out the water tower, adding people sitting on the bench instead of maybe a couple barbecuing, and then possibly, are we going with removing
There's some
kites?
kids.
Yeah, we can't have any kids just because of the.
That's right.
Yeah. Going with removing the kites?
they are gonna be bigger.
Yeah, I would just say thin out the kite lines because I didn't know what they were.
Aliens.
She do, but on the bend, she may wanna rethink the position of that water tower, cause if it's gonna go on a bend, you know what I mean, like the top of the water tower is gonna be like 4 feet. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, to me,
I mean, I like
the
it.
water tower is the most
I like that.
identifying feature in Kyle for the most part, until you hit downtown and you see the pie.
Put it in the-
So,
Got it.
I don't even like
All
that.
right. Anybody wanna make a motion to adjourn?
I motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Um,
We'll meet again September 30th.